Let Century Management Solutions get you to your next medical appointment. They specialize in non-emergency medical transportation, connecting patients to care, safety, reliability, and on time. Their advanced technology platform seamlessly coordinates patients, healthcare providers, insurers, and transportation partners all in one powerful network. With over 200 trusted transportation providers, they deliver scalable solutions backed by real-time tracking and complete transparency. Go to SENTRYMS.com.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
People love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
Well, as I predicted, the outsider businessman, pro-Trump, pro-United States, attorney Abelardo Espriella has stormed to a first-place finish in Colombia's election. 3 weeks ago, nobody knew who this man was. He chose not to participate in the two traditional corrupt local political parties, stormed out of nowhere as an independent. He needed 50% to avoid a runoff, and he got to about 45, which was an extraordinary accomplishment. Now, interestingly, the third candidate in the race, he follows Ivan Cepeda, who is the candidate of the current left-wing party, and also a center-right state senator ran third with almost 7% of the vote. It's very easy to see Esprilla's 43.7%, very strong finish, almost 45, joining with a disproportionate number of Paloma Valencia's vote, which means he is likely to be the new president. Now, he is anti-narco-terrorist, he is anti-Marxist, he is pro-freedom, he's in the mold of a Milei of Argentina, or of a Bukele of El Salvador. And he's a part of this entire wave towards freedom in Central America. We see it going on in our efforts to bring down the regime in Cuba. We see it in Venezuela. We see it in Guatemala. We see it in Bolivia. We see it coming up soon in other countries. So freedom is on the march. Center-right parties are winning again across Central America, and that's good. That's good news. This began really in Honduras, where they threw off a Marxist drug-dealing family government and put in Tito Asfura, who is a pro-U.S. and anti-narco candidate. So this is a great trend. Unfortunately, Colombia's outgoing left-wing Marxist Trump-hating president, Gustavo Petro, well, he's not taking it so well. After Sunday's first-round vote, which I said, populist firebrand and political outsider, they call him the Tiger, Abelardo de Espriella, finished first with roughly 44% of the vote, while Petro's chosen heir, leftist Senator Ivan Cepeda, came in second at about 41. Espriella rose like wildfire in the polls. It came out of nowhere in 3 weeks. He was a national phenomena. I wrote extensively about how he came out of nowhere. Basically a rejection of both parties, a rejection of the ruling elite, a true populist arising, as we've seen in other places in Central America. So instead of accepting the message from the voters, the current leftist president, Petro, went online declaring he could not accept the preliminary count, alleging that a private election contractor had added hundreds of thousands of fake votes. It sounds great, but he offered no evidence whatsoever to back his claim. And Colombia's electoral authorities and experts have pushed back on the claims of any major fraud. That is the incumbent government. Senator Bernie Moreno, a good friend of mine, called me from down there to tell me the latest. He was sent down, U.S. Senator from Ohio, early Trump supporter, real hard charger, was sent as an election observer and said there were no abnormalities done to stack the deck in favor of Esparella. Petro, of course, had no problem taking power when Colombia's system delivered him the presidency. There was a lot of questions about that election. But now, the voters appear ready to move away from the policies of appeasement to the drug cartels, destroying the energy sector supposedly by combat global warming. Suddenly the system itself is suspicious. The count is tainted, they say, and the will of the people must be questioned. Petro is a dangerous leftist, and his allies are laying the groundwork to try to delegitimize this victory that I called only days ago. They want to make it a defeat. Socialists are known to praise democracy when they win and attack it when they lose. They love it when federal judges make outrageous, tyrannical rulings for them, but the judges are corrupt and wrong if they make a decision in favor of the Trump administration. That's the America we are living in today. Petro better bite his tongue, because I think President Trump's watching, and of course there is now a second round. With neither candidate having met 50%, we now go to a runoff, and the runoff, Trump could be very influential. As I say, the third-party candidate was not of the left, she was of the center-right, far more likely to be in line with the surgeon Abelardo Esparella. So we're watching this very closely. This is very similar, as I say, what's going on across South America. We have an upcoming election coming up very soon. For example, in a number of those countries, we've got to watch it very, very carefully. Meanwhile, President Trump is tightening the terms of a potential Iranian deal. President Trump is really, I think, getting tough with the potential deal to end the war involving Iran, as Tehran continues to refuse to send her its remaining nuclear material. This appears to be the sticking point. Trump has made it very clear that the Iranians cannot oppress their own people, and they cannot continue to pursue nuclear weapons. They can't pretend that they aren't when they are, which is precisely what happened under Barack Obama. Obama gave them hundreds of millions of dollars that we know of, and hundreds of millions of dollars more in bribe money on pallets to make a deal with these people in which they agreed to stop developing nuclear weapons, whereupon they immediately went right back to developing nuclear weapons. And we actually fell for it. Trump is not falling for it. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said Iran had made major mistakes by attacking its Gulf state neighbors, because those attacks pushed our regional allies closer to the Trump administration. So in other words, nations like the UAE, for example, the Saudi kingdom, being attacked in both cases pushes them closer to a U.S. coalition. Very unwise. Secretary Scott Bessent, probably the best dressed and without any question the smartest, one of the smartest members of the Trump cabinet, Treasury Secretary. He also pointed to the U.S. blockade, saying that Iran's soil facilities are under severe pressure and that Tehran may have to begin shutting down wells. So we are closing down the oil supply for China, for Russia, for Venezuela, for Cuba. And that is when people say, well, it's all about the oil. It's all about the deft use of the oil by Donald Trump. Yes, Trump wants America to make money, not him, but America to make money on that oil. He wants to help make us not only entirely energy independent, but he wants us to be a major exporter of oil wherever we can secure it. Meanwhile, the war, unfortunately, is widening across the region. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he's ordered expanded military operations in Lebanon after Israeli forces occupied the strategic Beaufort Callus. President Trump, of course, is not budging from his long-stated foreign policy position of negotiating from strength. He's not rushing into another Obama-style deal built on appeasement, pallets of cash, and wishful thinking. President Trump is applying pressure economically, militarily, diplomatically, and regionally. Iran may talk big, but slowly and surely the president is moving Tehran towards a deal with the United States and our terms. It's because we're going to shut down their oil production. We've already severely put a crimp in it. This is not going to make the Chinese or the Russians very happy. They'll still be able to get oil, but they won't be able to get it at these prices, and that is the issue. This is the art of the deal on display for the world stage. Anybody betting against Donald Trump doesn't know that he never comes out not on top. He is I think, losing big on poly market when all is said and done is a joke. Trump will be, I think, exceeding expectations here. In the end, he made it very clear that he can't just declare victory and walk away. He has to have assurances of there'll be nuclear weapons. He wants to destroy their so-called nuclear dust on the way out. He's demanding on U.S. inspections. And without it, I'm afraid there will be no deal. This is not a man whose temperament should be pardoned. Former Mesa County Clerk Tina Peters, who's been right here in the Stone Zone, is now finally out of prison after Democrat Colorado Governor Jared Polis commuted her sentence. It's not surprising. Peters was suffering from cancer. She was never given proper clothing. She was always freezing. She was under the most inhumane conditions imaginable. I would say conditions probably prohibited by the Geneva Conventions in this epic act of cruelty of incarcerating a Gold Star mom solely because she kept evidence of election fraud. That's what she was really charged with. She had the goods and they know it, so they had to punish her. The president's pardon of her, of course, was a federal pardon. While it was nicely symbolic, it did not immediately release Peters, who was fading very quickly from the squalid conditions she was kept in a state of Colorado prison. This is a moral tragedy. Finally, Polis admitted the sentence was too harsh, saying the court wrongly considered her unpopular views and speech during sentences, which is an obvious violation of the First Amendment of the Constitution. In other words, when she was allowed to speak, she defended herself, because what she did was perfectly legal. That, of course, is the point conservatives have been making for years about liberals. In America, the justice system is supposed to punish crimes, not political opinions. So if a person breaks the law, the punishment should fit the offense. But when someone receives nearly a decade in the pokey, in part because the establishment dislikes what she believes and what she wants to say to others to hold that belief nationwide, well, then every American citizen should be alarmed and ashamed. Polis is facing severe internal backlash from the left-wing crazies of his own party when they're not high. The Colorado Democrats formally censuring him over commutation and barring him from appearing at official Democrat events throughout the state. To me, that would be a great honor. How much rubber chicken can one man eat? This shows that the Democrats, as a whole, are opposed to constitutional rights, generally speaking. They hate the Bill of Rights. They hate free speech. They really want to erase them. Polis is the exception, not the rule, or maybe he became scared because what he was doing was so incredibly brutal, as we watched the slow death of Tina Peters. Now, Tina Peters being freed shows that the culture in this country has changed for the better. But it will turn with a vengeance if Democrats ever wrangle power back on a national level. This kind of cruelty is just a lesson, a taste of what these people will do if they are once again allowed to weaponize our judicial system. I know it. I have lived it. These are people for whom there is no constitution, no law, no precedents. It's all about these deep-seated left-wing federal judges who believe that they are omnipotent and who break the canon of ethics again and again, as they did, for example, when they dismissed Lindsay Halligan as a prosecutor in Eastern Virginia in order to get rid of James Comey's huge headache in his prosecution. That was wrongly decided. All three judges violated the canon of ethics. All three would be, at least theoretically, prime candidates for impeachment based on their conduct. See, they agree to conduct themselves in a certain way when you become a judge, and they violated that canon of ethics repeatedly. For example, their constant references to seeing things in the press, specifically ruled out of bounds under the law. But they did it, and it's why James Comey walked the first time. He's not going to walk the second time. I think the 89-47 case is a pretty strong case. We, of course, don't know what the internal documentation looks like. It could greatly bolster the case of acting attorney Todd Blanche, who has been very hard charging on this case. It's something we're going to have to watch very, very carefully. I appreciate you joining us today on the Stone Zone to help us celebrate the extraordinary surge at Abdalo Esperala, the conservative outsider, pro-U.S., pro-Trump, anti-narco candidate who came out of nowhere to surge to almost 45%. Had he made it to 50, he would be the new president. Of course, the leftist dictator outgoing president is trying to throw sand in the gears and claim that it wasn't a legal election when there is no evidence to that effect. Where else could you hear this but the Stone Zone?
In this 25th anniversary year of September 11th, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation continues to honor America's heroes. Heroes like Fire Lieutenant Michael Wells, who was inspired by 9/11 to serve his community. After 14 dedicated years of service, he lost his battle with occupational cancer, leaving behind his wife, Katie, and their 3 children. Tunnel to Towers honored Lieutenant Wells by paying off the family's mortgage in recognition of his sacrifices. Donate $11 monthly and amplify your impact with a car or land donation. Go to T2T.org.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
Roger Stone, who's a very, one of the smartest political minds. Roger Stone was persecuted. People forget he's actually a brilliant political analyst.
Now, get him his own. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
Sometimes you wonder how things like this happen, but a divided 3 federal panel of the D.C. Circuit Judge has now ruled 2-1 that the Trump administration's restriction on transgender identifying active duty troops is likely unconstitutional. The majority claimed the policy appeared driven by hostility towards a politically unpopular group, did not address the question of their suitability to be warriors in battle, which is the job of our military, and it left in place an injunction protecting current service members involved in the case. Now, the ruling did allow the administration to keep restrictions in place for new recruits, and the dissent made the obvious point military readiness decisions belong to the commander-in-chief, the Pentagon, and the Congress, not some left-wing activist judge. Tying the hands of a president conducting foreign policy is unconstitutional. This decision obviously headed to a higher court, and I think we have a very strong reason to believe it will not survive review. But the Supreme Court has repeatedly been asked to clean up all of these left-wing activists, left-wing judge judicial decisions and their interference with Trump's policies, whether it was immigration reform or birthright citizenship to executive branch spending fights. Goes on to say that he doesn't have the authority to negotiate tariffs with our trading partners. This is an exceptional abuse of his executive power, and it's unconstitutional. The problem is it takes months, maybe weeks, months, even years to get to a federal judge. Meanwhile, progress is stalled. When Trump uses presidential authority, liberal judges call it dangerous. When Democrats use government power to impose their culture ideology, the same legal class makes excuses or they look the other way. This case is not really about compassion. It's about whether or not the courts will let a Republican president run the military according to readiness, discipline, and national defense, or whether every major policy must pass first through some filter of woke identity politics. Judicial obstruction by these left-wing activist court judges have gone too far. While the Supreme Court usually gets the right because President Trump's wise appointments to the bench have been decent, there's no reason why Trump should allow his agenda to be obstructed like this. It's time to follow, I think, in the example of Andrew Jackson or Abraham Lincoln. Let the rogue lawyers on the bench have their little opinions and proceed forward with saving America anyway, using your executive power. Meanwhile, we are going to go into some city politics on the other side. So Ram Mamdani ups his propaganda budget to $5.2 million. We're going to lay it all out for you when we come back to the Stone Zone.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
People love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, get him his own. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
Stone Zone, the hottest political talk radio show in America today, where you can learn things you didn't know. Joining me now is Mike Howell. He has been a leading voice in government accountability projects, particularly as president of the Oversight project. He's been a leading proponent of this concept of a weaponization fund to assist those who were denied due process, those who were abused, weaponized, the targets of prosecutorial misconduct, government overreach, and the other efforts to destroy President Donald Trump and, candidly, everybody who supported him. And it appears that the background here is that the president had a pending suit with the IRS because they leaked his tax returns during the 2016 campaign. Every American is entitled to the confidentiality of their tax records, but thousands of Trump's personal and company tax records, as well as those of his children, were leaked by the IRS. It's a suit he would have won. He could have won. I think he sued for $10 billion. I think he settled for a couple billion with the understanding that the money would go into a fund that would help those who've been the targets of victimization, set up a scheme by which it would be administered. A federal judge seems to have stepped in to stop this particular plan, which I think certainly had a great purpose. Joining us now, Mike Howell. Tell me what's up.
Basically, the latest is a federal judge stepped in last week after 35 non-party judges sent a letter, retired judges, saying, hey, we don't like this thing, please stop it. Very unusual, very unheard of, actually. The judge agreed and then forced, the Trump team to respond and gave them a deadline of a couple weeks. And so that's one kind of lane this is moving down. The real lane that I think people need to be focused on is the Senate Republicans. They're the ones who are most opposed to this fund.
Yes.
They are threatening to defund ICE and CBP unless President Trump abandons his plans for it. So in other words, they would reopen the border and, let ICE just go unfunded unless Trump kills this thing and, does not compensate those who were harmed. It's an ultimate betrayal by the Rhino establishment. Majority Leader Thune is a chief architect of this posture. And it's terrible news, and it looks like the DOJ today, although ambiguous, said they're going to abide by this court's ruling, which is really non-news, but left unsaid, was whether they're going to continue to fight it in court. And so that's what we're pushing for. Fight, don't give up. These people who were so viciously harmed need to be compensated.
It just seems to me, however, that there may have been a technical problem here, which is I think if Trump had settled the suit for X dollars, then put those dollars into a fund to compensate those who had been unfairly treated, set up an independent mechanism to administer the fund, I think there would be no viable lawsuit against that. It's his money, he can spend it the way he wants to. Had it been in that way from the beginning, the Senate nor the judiciary would have been in the way to block this. So I hate to say this as strongly as I think the fund was a good idea. And people kept asking me, well, what about you, Roger? They showed up at your house at 6 o'clock in the morning with 29 heavily armed FBI agents. They perp-walked your wife outside in her pajamas at 6 o'clock in the morning for CNN cameras. Would you be entitled to something? I actually made no decision about, had this come to pass, had there been such a fund, whether I would have filed. In all honesty, the people who were mistreated in January 6th, who were denied due process and who were held under circumstances that would be unacceptable under the Geneva Convention, which we treat terrorists worse than we're treating American citizens, based on many, many credible reports. To me, that is those people should be taken care of first. Those are the people I would like to see take care of first. I have no idea what people like Paul Manafort might do. General Flynn, of course, has already won a financial challenge. He's gotten $1 million payment. Now, the $1 million was Pyrrhic, but it was important because it proved that a court of law ruled that they basically set Mike Flynn up. I mean, 2 FBI agents went there to entrap him, even those after the fact said they didn't think he lied about anything. They were overruled by Andrew McCabe, the FBI agent, who's not even in the line of succession at the Justice Department. So it's a very strange thing, wouldn't you say, Mike?
Oh, it's very, very strange. I mean, these people, and I agree with you, the January 6th victims deserve to be absolutely at the front of the line. And if I'm named to lead this fund and the fund survives, these people will be paid in a matter of months. I mean, the speed at which you can operate in this independent fund would really, shock some people.
I guess here is the question. That is, I'm not a lawyer, but basically, since this settlement has failed to serve its purpose, is there a way for Trump to revisit the case and litigate it? Because if he litigates it, he'll win. That was the whole point of settling.
I think your initial point is correct, that there could have been a cleaner way to do this. The political problem that I think President Trump was greeted with is he didn't want the money to hit his pockets at all, right? You can imagine what they would say, and then they'd come after him, once again for this if he were to take the payment.
He could have combated that by announcing the foundation and publishing the transfer of money from one bank to another with proper redactions, I suspect. Well, it is a great tragedy because you and I both know people whose lives have been shattered. We know people, sadly, who committed suicide. We know families of people, two women who were shot in cold blood, one of them bludgeoned to death, the other one shot in cold blood. The only people to die on January 6th. Both died at the hands of overzealous, shall we say, Capitol Hill police. And rather than be charged, those officers have been given medals and commendations, which is an absolute outrage. To be beaten to death with a steel pipe, essentially, by a female officer and then have the coroner say, "Oh, she died of a drug overdose." Please, I speak of one of those who lost their lives.
The harm is real and it's profound, and it's not just January 6th. Of course, that was the biggest example of it, but people had the full force of weaponization thrown at them for participating in all different activities, whether it was Christian protesters outside abortion clinics or parents at school boards. And to hear the Republican Senate and the rhinos refer to this thing as a slush fund is just obscene, because not just a year or so ago they would campaign with these people. They would issue statements in support of them, and now when there's a chance to help them, they're rug pulling on them and they're re-victimizing them all over again. And you know what is actually a slush fund? How about the Ukraine funding? How about the Farm Bill? How about virtually all the money they handed out to states like, Minnesota, which just turned around and gave it to Somali warlords? The Senate operates off of actual slush funds. And here, when there's actually a chance to help real Americans, they thumb their nose at them and poke them in the eye and throw them under the bus. And it's absolutely unacceptable. And to make matters worse, they threatened to open the border once again to return to the Biden years if they didn't get their way. And I don't think voters are going to forget that. At some point, the Senate needs to give people that support President Trump a reason to show up and vote for them. And here, they're just, sticking them right in the eye.
No, I absolutely could not agree more. This is, unfortunately, again, I think the goal was a worthy one. But the president, I think, has to examine whether this can be revisited legally. He needs to continue to press the case. I think that's important. Generally speaking, I'm encouraged that Assistant Attorney General Todd Blanche now talking openly about investigating the 2020 election, looking at the safety and security, integrity of the electronic voting machines, presumably also has a seat at the table and looking at the material from the Fulton County warehouse, particularly the 300,000 ballots that were counted, but Mike, they were never folded. So if they were never folded, how was it they arrived in the mail? There you go. Not to mention the admission of members of the Fulton County Board that as many as 35,000 voters matched signatures or matching serial numbers. But hey, what's 35,000 votes in one state in which you only lost by 8,000?
You're asking the right questions, and I'm certainly glad that acting AG Blanche seems to be asking them to, and then also backing them up with action. I think he deserves tremendous applause for defending this fund to date. I hope he continues to. He went into the lion's den and got ripped a new one by Republican senators who obviously hate the concept of this so much, because deep down they hate the MAGA movement, and so many of the victims of weaponization are part of the MAGA movement. That's why in my candidacy I've been saying I will make MAGA millionaires, and because these people deserve it.
Well, I will say this: the acting attorney general has also been very out front on the whole Russian collusion question, which, as you now know, because it's a seditious conspiracy, sits in front of a South Florida a grand jury and set of prosecutors. Todd Blanche has made changes in that team. He's brought in Joe DiGenova, a veteran crime fighter, former head of the U.S. Attorney, I believe, for Manhattan, and also high up in the Justice Department to prosecute that case. And they get a jurisdiction that's not Washington, D.C., because they accurately make a case that this is a continuing conspiracy. It begins in the Oval Office with Barack Obama himself running the meeting. Joe Biden was there, helpfully suggesting that General Flynn be charged under the Logan Act. Susan Rice was there. She was saying, let me write a memo when this is over, saying the exact opposite of what we're really doing. It's called a CYA memo, Mike. And you had John Brennan, who was probably giggling a lot because he was the major domo of this particular disaster. He's the guy who knew that the so-called Steele dossier was a fraud, paid for by Hillary Clinton. It was a fabrication, yet he carefully slid it in, not to the actual intelligence briefing, but into the footnotes of the briefing, so he could then use it as a legal rationale to begin spying on everybody and his brother. So these people are extraordinarily busted, and the question is, will they be prosecuted? The case against them is not a weak case. They knew precisely what they're doing. They knew there was no intelligence breach at the department. They knew that there was no Russian hack of the Democrat National Committee. They have to give proof, any evidence whatsoever to prove that. And in fact, the empirical evidence proves the exact opposite. If you examine the speed time of the servers during which the material was purloined, that time is consistent with it being loaded to a hard disk and taken out the back door by someone. I think we can speculate about that. But their whole narrative has fallen apart, yet they still try to stick to it. It's one thing about liberals. They'll make an outrageous claim, you disprove it, they'll wait a couple weeks, and then they'll recycle it and make the same claim again as if you never addressed it. Did you ever notice that?
Oh, yeah, it's how you make the big lie. They're the big liars, and so you just repeat the lie over and over again until it reaches a stage of near religious dogma for them, that Trump is somehow a Russian stooge. And that's how they try to tear this country apart. I mean, they tricked a lot of people and still have many who have adopted that trick as an article of faith, and they did tremendous damage along the way.
Yeah, when we come back, one of the things I want to talk to you about is the auto pen, because I'm, as a non-lawyer, I'm still convinced that the pardons that were signed by Joe Biden, many of them, if not all of them, utilizing the auto pen are not should not be legally binding because he didn't even know about them. He didn't authorize them other than in the most general way, as he was, as they were putting on his diapers and giving him his nightly medication. He said that he wanted that taken care of.
You're absolutely right, and we got a big court case winding through right now where Joe Biden's trying to hide more evidence that would shed some light onto when the auto pen, really came into use. I think his, decline was a lot earlier than people are ready to admit.
But he's already kind of blurted out to the New York Times the truth is, which he told his guys okay, what, like murderers? Okay, we can do some murderers. I mean, it was kind of like that, as opposed to examining each case to determine whether clemency was merited. This claim by Jill Biden last night that when he melted down on TV, her claim that she had never seen him act before that, like that, nor would she ever see him act that way again. That sounds to me like a bald-faced lie. This guy was non-compos mentis. He proved it every single day, falling down, could not be able to find the audience, shaking hands with people who didn't exist, saying that he was in a different place than he was, trying to introduce somebody for which he just gave an obituary. Do you remember some of those hits? I mean, it was like a Benny Hill operation watching him campaign across the country.
Right. Well, he didn't even campaign across the country too much. They hit him in the basement. But Jill Biden, let's us forget, she's a medical doctor, right? We're to believe that. And so I find it hard to believe she missed all the signs that everyone else in the country was so well aware of. And I think the auto pen really was running the White House in the very earliest of days. I mean, in our investigation, we've uncovered, instances in which at the beginning of the administration, Joe was in the White House per the calendar, yet the auto pen was still signing things. And so they started hiding it, in full force during the campaign. And then when they went into the White House, they knew they would have a different type of administration, an auto pen administration. And it calls into question the, serious legal question. I think it's honestly beyond question, the legal validity of so many actions, including the commutations for violent criminals that, unfortunately, the Department of Justice is still treating as valid and releasing individuals.
Yeah, people who had never expressed remorse and never applied for such clemency. Quite interesting, isn't it? All right, we're going to have to come back after a short break. We'll be back with my good friend Mike Howell.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
It is a great, great person, Roger Stone.
The Stone Zone. The Stone Zone. Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone. Where's Roger Stone?
Here's Roger Stone.
Well, as I predicted, the socialist jihadi mayor of New York City, the progressive Democrat Zohran Mamdani, has now upped his propaganda budget to $5.2 million. How many people would that feed or clothe or house? But New York City taxpayers are about to get another lesson in progressive government where basic services are struggling, but City Hall hires more political operatives and insiders. Zohran Mamdani's new Office of Mass Enlargement, what does that even mean? It's projected to cost taxpayers more than $5.2 million in salaries in 2027. No one can even tell us what the office does or why it's needed. City Hall says the office is about increasing public participation, one of my big concerns, and connecting marginalized communities. I lay awake at night thinking about that. For government services. This is a plausible cover for Mamdani's taxpayer-funded political machine. Even my old friend, Democrat consultant Hank Shankoff, says it's purely politics. They're going to try to buy you with your own money. Warning, as I do, that the city has real deficits and real services that needs attention. The high tax, soft on crime policies of Mamdani will destroy New York City. They can try to dress it up as a moderation, but you have an epically and politicized police department. You have a woke ideology in which when the mayor of New York will not go to the Israel Day parade, there's something wrong in New York City. It's bad enough that the city payroll already tops $5.1 million, with average salaries for $125,000. That's in this little office. One role reported pays $150,000, and I can tell you exactly what it is. It's a campaign manager on a state payroll. Several staffers have previous campaign experience, of course, tied to Mamdani's political operation. They're buying you with your own money. They're running a campaign with your tax dollars. The office has already been canvassing neighborhoods. That's going door to door, pushing residents to attend rent guideline board meetings, in other words, rallies, that could affect rent-stabilized apartments. Outreach has taken place in Manhattan, Queens, Brooklyn, and the Bronx. This is a left-wing socialist government in a nutshell. They never seem to have enough money for clean streets or safe subways or the police or the basic qualities of life, including ending people defecating in the streets. But there's always money for messaging, organizing, bureaucracy, and just political muscle. Mamdani is, just like we knew it would be, forming a socialist thugocracy with our tax dollars. So stay tuned, because I used to think that Bill de Blasio was the worst mayor in New York City history. I may yet be forced to change my mind. He's a smooth media operator who has used a very shady system of nonprofits and other political parties to finance his rise. My good friend Sam Antar at White Collar Crimes has very much exposed that, but his policies ultimately will fail. I think this is very good, because I think it's important before the 26 elections that people see the havoc that socialist left policies lead on New York City. Things will not be better by October, and I think this becomes a showcase of the failure of their policies. Meanwhile, the California Democrats are freaking out of an internet phenomenon who's a former relatively small-time reality TV personality, now using very clever media techniques to run as an independent for mayor of Los Angeles, where everyone knows the mayor is completely and totally incompetent. He's making Mayor Karen Bass probably the most vulnerable mayor in the country, because she has no plan whatsoever to recover from the Pacific Palisades fires, which may have been set for the purposes of clearing the land so it could be used for more political uses.
Get ready, Staten Island. It's time to celebrate 5 years of Ferry Hawks baseball.
This week, come out to the ballpark as the Ferry Hawks welcome in the Hagerstown Flying Boxcars at Staten Island University Hospital Community Park for a homestand on June 10th. For a 5-game series as the Ferry Hawks welcome in the Hagerstown Flying Boxcars. Individual game tickets start at just $12.
Visit ferryhawks.com now to lock in your seats.